Hello, everybody. This is Eric Pennington, and welcome to the Videocast for the Violet Mental Health and Wellbeing Ministry. Today, I have joining us Alisia Davis. Hello, Alisia. How are you?
I am fabulous. How are you, Eric?
I'm doing great.
Awesome.
And I do so appreciate you willing to spend some time with me today to talk about mental health and well-being. And I know we've conversed and we've communicated previous. Today, I'd really like to get your perspective on the women or the woman side of things as it relates to mental health and well-being. And I'm going to, before I get into some of those, hey, I'm curious questions, can you tell the audience a little bit about, your connection to women's ministry and maybe some of the things that you're actually working on too now that kind of connect?
So women's ministry is, right now it's my jam, like ministering to women and coming alongside women and walking out this journey that we're on and letting women know that we're all there, we're all in it. And just providing those supports is of the utmost importance to what I feel like I've been called to do. So pretty much everything that I'm doing right now kind of centers around that purpose, like building women up. So I'm leading women's ministry at Violet, and then I'm also a personal development life coach, focusing on women and transition and women who know that there's something they're supposed to be doing, but need support in identifying that, or need support in, somebody just to say, you know what, get out there and do it. And so coming alongside them and really just pulling out of them what's already in them and showing them, that it's already there and they just need to walk it out.
Wow.
So that's what I get to do. And it's so much fun.
I believe it. And I know you're good at it. So that just makes it for a good combo, right? So, you mentioned about that. I don't know if you necessarily said heart, but I get a sense that there's a heart you're drawn to what women are going through. And this ministry is geared toward mental health and well-being. And we're not clinicians. So right. You and I today are not going to talk about how to diagnose a certain disorder or what medications or all that kind of stuff. But if you think about the quote average woman out there, whether they're in suburbia or whether they're in an urban environment, and what they may be struggling with, and keeping in mind, I know the pandemic has sort of added a lot more weight on their shoulders. What are some of the things that you've seen, maybe even had conversations about that? What are some of those top concerns that women have these days?
So it's a lot, but some of the main ones are just feeling alone, feeling like they're not measuring up. We're competing against the social media mom or the Pinterest mom. I remember like breaking down in tears when DJ was little because they had an assignment that they had to bring things that started with the letter. And it was like the mom before me did pink and purple popcorn and had it all arranged. And I was like, I'm just gonna send some lollipops. Like we had hell. Right. And it was like this need to compete and this need to one up the mom that has the pink and purple popcorn because it's so creative and so imaginative. And there's that type of thing in every realm of, being a mom and being a wife. It's like you want to do it perfect and you want to do it right. And you feel like you're the only one messing it up. And so there's a lot of pressure there. And, then there's the fact that you're like, I can't tell anybody I don't know how to do that. Or I'm just supposed to know. I'm mom. I'm supposed to know. Or, right. I'm the wife. I'm just supposed to know how to do that. And it makes it tough when you're competing against the perfectly decorated home and the, birthday parties that come right out of a magazine and, all of that. It's a lot of pressure. So
I know you're going to get to some other things, but one thing that really leaped out to me, what you said, and we talked about this prior to recording, is this our fixation with being okay or all together. And I know in the mental health, or maybe I even should term it brain health, our brain fitness, right? It kind of falls in there too. This idea that, well, I shouldn't have any issues with my emotions. Oh, I shouldn't have days when I don't really want to get up out of bed, and that I should be together. And then on top of that, Alisa, the beating up of oneself if you don't measure up to, quite frankly, what you were just describing.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on that? Because it seems to me that if I can't get to a place where I can be okay with not being okay, it seems like that would be really, really challenging.
That is really challenging. And my mantra is it's okay not to be okay.
Ah, and I did not steal that from you. It just came to my head, but that's great. I'm glad that you're running with that. Exactly. So, well, let's put ourselves in the position again of that woman out there that says, well, wait a minute, you don't understand where I live. You don't understand what it's like in my neighborhood, my city, or whatever. What's maybe the first potential step? I know there's not the answer here, but what do you say to someone who feels like, hey, Alisia, I can't be okay with not being okay?
You have to be okay with not being okay, because we're all going through it. And I don't care what it looks like on the outside, we all have days. Now, having that support network around you is so important, because you'll have that person that you can say, hey, I'm struggling today. And for some women, that's enough just to be able to have a conversation and work through some things to get over it. That support network is important, but you have to be able to reach out for help, because when you can't, you're going to end up in a really dark place that it's going to be even harder to get out of. And I was that woman. I was that woman that was like, always, I'm a type A personality, right? So, it's like take charge, get it done. And so I'd walk in a room and that would be who I was, that take charge, get it done person. But you didn't see me 5 minutes before sitting in my car, panicking about having to go in and be that take charge person. Or in my car after the event, falling apart because I feel like I messed up the whole thing. And it was those perceptions and feeling like I was in it alone and I couldn't talk to somebody. So there was nobody going, hey, Alisia, it was great. Like, let it, you did great. This was great. And that was great. Yeah, this little thing might've been a little off, but it was great.
Yeah.
The only voice I allowed in my head was my own. And that was the last voice I needed to be listening to.
Wow. You mentioned something there that really struck me too, about you indicated about the idea of isolation. Again, I know you didn't maybe use that exact word, but you talked about the principle of that. And then you kind of went into having someone you can talk to. Talk a little bit about the power of having that person, or maybe persons, that you can go to.
Yeah, it's really important, because they can speak life into a situation where you can only see what's wrong. And they can show you your blind sides. And, having friends that'll do that for you is important, but it's also important when it gets to a certain point to reach out and get that professional help. Because when you get that professional help, that counselor, they have no vested interest besides seeing you healthy. And, our friends love us and they want to make us smile and they want to make us feel good. So sometimes they might not tell us the whole truth. They might, give us enough of it. And we need that counselor, that other voice, to speak into the situation. When you're just talking to we say stuff to ourselves that we would never say to another person. Yeah. And when that's the only voice you're allowing to speak into the situation, that's a problem.
Yeah, boy, that's really powerful. And I think maybe you just kind of described it really well. That's why isolation can be so dangerous, right?
Hmm?
What do you say? You kind of peeled another layer there with the counselor, right? And again, we've talked before. I'm a believer in therapy. I know you are as well. Um, I liken it to everybody has in their contact list. You've got your family physician. If you have a chronic disease, you may have a specialist. If you are going to get your eyes examined for glasses, you have that optometrist. I'm going to kind of turn that around a bit, and I know it's going to be kind of rhetorical, hopefully not sarcastic, but how is it that we don't typically have that counselor in our contact list? What happened? Do you think that we've come to this place where that's the one thing where we don't?
Because there's such a stigma surrounding needing brain health.
Mm.
Like, to say I'm not mentally well, to that, oh, well, you're crazy. Oh, well, there's such a stigma around not being mentally well.
Yeah.
That we think to take that step, everybody's going to know, everybody's going to talk about us. And we've got to get so far away from that. That stigma is killing people.
Yes, I agree. And what do you think about that from, I call it the Christian culture. Maybe it's the modern day evangelical Christian culture. I'm of the mind, Alisia, that I think it's even worse inside of the family of God than it is potentially for the sort of secular world. Because
I
I
call
got to
it,
say, go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, I call exactly what you just described toxic Christianity.
Wow.
It creates a toxic environment where people can't get the support and feel like they can get the help that they need from the one place they're supposed to be able to get it.
Yeah. And to your point, and that's one of the reasons why doing this ministry, we wanted to start it because we wanted people to know that Violet is on purpose about mental health and well-being, and that we are not going to stigmatize it. And that if somebody at church at 10:35 is in the hallway and sees Alisia, they know they could say, "Hey, I saw you on that video cast," or "I saw the thing that you posted about," and you'd be willing to say, or quite frankly, I know you well enough, Alisia, you'd be like, what can I do to help? Right?
Right.
Because that's the thing. And Alisia, I did not, sometimes you don't really understand a problem until you have that same problem, right? And I know some of that's human, right? I mean, I get that. So it's not necessarily always well, you should have paid attention, blah, 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 back when. But I know for me, when I went to a counselor about 4 years ago, because in my case, I was exhausted emotionally. I had run out of my own options, and I had people praying for me. But God made it clear this is deeper, and I want to do a deeper work with a counselor. So I go. But I experienced the stigma. I don't know if I can spit this out. Being stigmatized, right? I experienced that look of, ooh, that awkward silence where you could tell like the person is trying to find a way to exit. And I didn't judge those people. I didn't, consider them to be now the enemy. But it was almost in a way, at least it was like God saying, this is what I'm talking about. And when you mentioned toxic, I'm going, because that's what it's like. So certainly inside of Violet, I feel very confident that, again, my scenario that I just threw out with you and somebody coming up to you in a hallway, that will prove to be true. I know not every person in our community is going to Violet, so I can't speak for other churches and other organizations, but I know what we're trying to do. And I guess, Alisia, that's great, right? It's great that we have an open arm approach to it. So that also leaves us with the reality that it's still going to require some courage, right?
It does. Absolutely.
So what were
You
some
have
of
to
the
be brave
things?
enough.
Yeah. So what were some of the things that you did, or maybe if you can talk about your story about that bravery where you said, I'm moving forward, and what got you there? If you, whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
So my story has taken so many twists and turns, but just to kind of speak to that toxic Christianity. So when I was going through some of the darkest times, I was in the church. I was very active in the church. I was praying, and I would come to church on Sunday, and it just seemed like everybody had it together.
Mm.
Everybody was putting on, I call it, they put on the face when they walked in the door. And so here's me sitting in the pews, looking around, looking for somebody that I felt like could understand what I was going through.
Mm-hmm.
And because we all put on the face, I didn't see that. And so that just reinforced in me that I was the only one screwed up, and I was the only one that was doing this thing wrong.
Right.
And was I not praying hard enough? What was it? And then when you talk to people in the church, not Violet, but in the church, and the
Yep.
first thing they say is, well, did you pray about it? Well, yeah, but nobody said, did you seek medical attention? Or, did you try to figure out medically what could be wrong?
Yeah.
No one said that. And so it was like I was looking around, and I was like, I something's wrong with me. And
Mm.
so a lot of times, like when I tell my story, I'll say, like, the church almost killed me. And not that, they took a gun and shot me, but just that they made me feel like I was so screwed up beyond repair, and that I was the only one like that, that the next step in my journey was suicidal thoughts,
Mm.
because I just didn't see how I could fix it.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the reasons I call it toxic Christianity. Because if I walk in the church and my arm is hanging off and it's obvious my arm is broken, everybody in there is going to be like, go get your arm set, go to the hospital, go to the ER, get an x-ray.
Yeah.
But if I walk in and you can visibly see that something's not right, nobody's saying, hey, have you gone and seen a counselor? Have you looked at some of the medical conditions that you have and some of the side effects of the medicine that you're taking?
Right.
No one engaged in that conversation. So, where I am now, like, I make it a point. Like, when someone talks to me, I'm like, you know what? Sounds like you need to see a counselor. Sounds like, you might want to go get that checked out. Medicines don't always play well together.
Yeah.
And it could cause some of the things you're experiencing, like, get it checked out. But until everybody gets on board with that and everybody starts, there's nothing wrong with seeing a therapist. You can have Jesus and a therapist.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. It's a tool. Just like if I can't see, I put on glasses.
Tool.
Right? It's a tool. If my arm is broken, I get a cast. That cast is a tool till my arm heals.
Yeah.
Therapy is the same thing. It is a tool to get you through so you can manage on your own. And sometimes that might be, a couple sessions. It might be like me with years of sessions.
Yeah. Well, to your point there, I think, as I look back, one of the things that I think was important was not to let myself believe that my going to see a counselor was just a one-off, and that it was, oh, you're good now. You'll never shut this door, throw away the key. You're not going to need this anymore. When in reality, if I were to have done that, it would have been just stigmatizing it all over again. Because again, getting yourself into a place where you believe that somehow you should be able to get through life without needing that kind of care, to me is, I mean, you're not being very bright about the reality of it. Because the last time I checked, your brain is a part of your body. So, right?
And there's so many things that impact it. What you're eating, not exercising. Like I said, medical conditions. Yeah. When your medicines don't play well together, all of that can affect brain health. Yeah. Genetics plays a part. We have to talk about these things as a family. Well, you can't hide Auntie Bert in the closet and be like, oh, she was special. We got to have those conversations.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because I know in the community in which I grew up in, the idea of going to a counselor was, no, you don't do that. We don't need to do that. No, you just, it was like anything but that. Right. Because in the community I grew up in, and I don't want to speak for everyone in the African-American community. I grew up in an African-American community, and that was part of the culture. And, again, I don't have time to like assign past blame and all that other stuff. Life, right. It's abundantly clear to me. This thing called life is, so in my mind, I recognize that I can learn from that and not repeat it with myself, and not repeat it for my kids, and anyone who comes to me and is in my sphere of influence that God has given me. That this, again, having this idea that somehow it's only for those type of people, to me, that's kind of the same issue with race and all the other things. It's like we put these people in a box, we put a label on it, and we assign it. Is it good or is it bad? Is it good or is it evil? And I, Alisia, kind of look at it sort of from a non-dualistic perspective. Well, why don't I ask some questions? Why don't I listen to what they are saying to try to understand where they're coming from before I assign them this place of either good or bad?
Right.
For the life of me, but that's a whole different show. So maybe we'll come back and we'll do that one too.
We'll do that one too.
Yeah, let's stay on this. So in women's ministry, because I'm kind of going back to that resource thing again, and recognizing that some people maybe are not going to be brave, and maybe they really, this is like, maybe they grew up in a time or grew up in a culture that said, you just don't do that, right? So what are some of the if somebody wants to get involved in women's ministry, and I mean from the perspective of joining a group or hanging out with other women, where you can feel safe and you can feel comfortable talking about maybe your mental health, what are some ways that you'd advise or you'd recommend they take in order to get to that place of doing that?
So I would absolutely recommend you get in a small group, or get in a group with some women that are willing to be vulnerable and do life with you. One of the ways that I realized that I really needed to reach out for some help is I was in a group. It was a book club.
Okay.
But it was a church book club, and I got around these women and we were talking about the characters in the book. Mm-hmm. And through that conversation, it allowed me to feel safe to share. And when I started sharing, the way these women ministered to me changed my life. So being in a group with women that are willing to be vulnerable is key. So if you get in a small group and they just want to talk about surface stuff, then, maybe look for another group. It's not a one and done. Just because one group didn't work doesn't mean all of them won't work. You have to get it's a fit. Like, you're not going to fit everywhere, but you're going to fit somewhere. And you have to be willing to go down that road to find that fit. So that's one way that women's ministry, we have a ton of small groups at Violet with different makeups and different women and different topics. And so try one. If it doesn't work, try another one. If it still doesn't, come talk to me. I know a lot of the women. I can make a recommendation of where I think, you might fit. So don't be afraid to be like, I'm not jiving with this group. There's no shame in that. Everybody's not going to fit everywhere, but everyone will fit somewhere.
That's a great insight, and it's kind of leading me to think in terms too, Alisia, of this idea that it's okay if it's not for you. I sometimes, again, I feel like our culture has become so dualistic. I'm using that term. I mean, I use non-dualistic, but this idea that I love it, I hate it. It's good or it's bad. It's wrong or it's right. And it's like, hold on, can we have a little nuance? Maybe it's not that they're bad. It's just that they're not where you're at. And you need to find a different group. And it means you just need to, you send Alisia a text and say, hey, I tried that group. They're in a different place. What else could I do? And I think that, my experiences at Violet with all the ministries is very consistent along that line, that there's this openness and desire to find good fit, right?
Right.
So
the other thing I would encourage them to do is, if a small group, right? But then come to the events, connect with friends, go out to dinner, meet some folks for coffee. Like, don't isolate. Our tendency when things are not right is to isolate, because one, we don't want people to know.
Yeah.
But that's the worst thing you could do, is isolate. Now, there's a difference between isolating and needing some time alone to process, right? There's a difference. So I'm not saying never be alone. Sometimes you need to go for that walk in the woods by yourself and just be in nature, you and God, and deal with some stuff. That's important.
Yeah.
But you want to stay connected. You don't want to isolate, which is why the pandemic has been so taxing on people, because it was forced isolation. And we couldn't connect in a way that we need. God created us to live in community.
Yep.
And so what the pandemic was asking us to do is go against our very nature.
Yeah.
And the result is we now have folks struggling, but it's stigmatized. So they're not going to speak up and say they're struggling. And it's just a horrible, horrible situation. So we can't isolate. We have to connect, come to events, find folks that like to do what you like to do and connect. Right. It's just so important.
Well, and you're not talking about like you have to be involved with 20 people. I mean, you're talking about a core group of people, right? Is it typically the size of a small group in your world? With is it 4 or 5-ish?
Yeah, a triad is what I say. Like, you need 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Is, what I would recommend. And then small groups can be, you need a couple things, right? It's not a one and done. Like, you might need that triad. And then you might want that small group, which can be anywhere from 5 to 10, right?
Yeah.
And you want that small group. And then the corporate events have their purpose too, where there's 50, 60 people.
Yep.
But you just have to find what you need in that moment.
That's great. So, Alisia, I think we've kind of talked about, the threshold of what could be a good aid to someone who's in that place of where maybe they're wondering, or they're grappling with it, and finding community and having those that they can go to be vulnerable with. If I asked you around the idea that, because we talked about toxic Christianity a little bit, and I'm not going to ask you what's the cure for toxic Christianity, because that's pretty big, I know. But what are you thinking? I mean, what are some ways that we can be less, let's start it there, less toxic in that regard?
Stop pretending. We're not okay. We're not okay.
Yeah.
So, be vulnerable, be authentic. That I'm fine.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
not saying every person that walks up to you, you're like, oh, I'm struggling. I'm about to lose my mind. I can't do this. I'm just so overwhelmed. No,
Right. Right.
that's not what I mean. I just
Yeah.
mean, be real.
Yeah.
And I think that's been what I've been, feel like I've been called to, is to be real. The one thing people can count on from me is real. I'm going to tell you the real of it. I'm going to tell you how I struggled. I'm going to tell you what got me through. I'm going to, the last thing I want somebody to walk away from me saying, oh, I feel more alone than when I started talking to her.
Wow.
At that point, I failed.
Do you believe that in that situation, would that be a case of where you are not being authentic and you're not being who you truly are? Is that what you're translating that to?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think that's so powerful, Alisia, because America, in my opinion, right, we're so performance driven. And I don't know if it's because of how we worship at the altar of sports, where there's got to be a winner, there's got to be the most valuable, the highest, the biggest. And the reality is, yeah, I get it. And there's a debate, I'm certain, right? LeBron or Michael, and I'm in the Michael camp. I just want to admit that I'm being authentic. I'm in the Michael camp. He's the GOAT. But how many Michaels and LeBrons are there? They're not that many. And I'm not trying to diminish my abilities just because I haven't achieved those heights, because I think that's part of the problem, right? We're
Yep.
chasing this prize that we're never going to get, right?
It's not realistic. So
Yeah.
I used to have this feeling like I couldn't tell my story, that it wouldn't make a difference, because what I was looking at specifically in the women's ministry realm is, the Beth Moores, the Lisa Harpers, the Priscilla Shires, all these women, and they all had this story, this, this thing that happened to them. And
Right.
I was like, I don't have that. I just woke up one morning and felt like I couldn't get out the bed. Like there was no tragedy that put me in that position. And so I felt like no one could relate to my story, because it just seemed like when they told their stories, everybody was like, oh, I get it. There was all this instant relating to it. And so I thought that there had to be that tragedy. There had to be that tragic moment. And what God showed me was, no, there's more women like you that don't have that tragedy and just need to understand that they're not alone. You have to tell your story. And at the same time questioning, like, why am I going through this? Well, dear child, this is why you're going through this, so that you can turn around and minister to somebody else. I can minister from a place of experience that another woman may not be able to in this particular arena, in this situation.
Yeah, and I think that really does speak to the idea of our willingness. I call it taking the assignment that God gives us, right? I don't know if you've ever been in this spot. I know I have. Well, God, I was kind of hoping that you were going to do this.
Right.
Or, Lord, you know what? I think I'm much better suited for that, And now it's taken me, I'm embarrassed. I can laugh about it though. It's taken me so many years to finally kind of get to that place of understanding that, Eric, there's your will for your life and there's my will for your life. And yours does not come close. And you know what?
We want to tell God what he's calling us to. God, this is what you need
hey
me
God,
to do.
You got a minute?
And let me tell you, it's funny now, but we do something at church called Focus Living.
Yeah.
And the point of Focus Living is you go through this weekend, and at the end of it, you have a personal calling statement.
Yep.
And it's really spirit-led and God-directed. And so the first time I did it, went through the whole weekend, had some really profound insights, came up with my calling statement. And I was like, yeah, no, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, no, I folded all the papers up and put them in the drawer. Like, no. At the time I was in children's ministry. I always thought that, children's ministry, youth ministry was where, I was supposed to be. And you're telling me I need to talk to women? Yeah, no, don't feel that call. Not answering that phone. And I literally put it away. And so then the next time they offered focused living, I'm like, all right, great. This is it. I'm going to do it again.
Right.
Because I thought somehow I was going to get a different answer. But God being God, I went through the whole weekend again, did it again, got to the person, same answer. Same answer. And so then I said, well, let me start thinking about this. Let me look at this. And, at the same time, I'm still hiding from who I am and what's going on in my life and not telling anybody, not wanting anybody to know, questioning God, like, why is this happening to me? Mm-hmm. And, when I finally said, all right, God, I'm listening. Like, what do you want me to do? Really? And stopped running from it.
Yeah.
And started engaging with him and figuring out, how to walk this thing out. And then it's funny, like people start coming along my journey and I'm getting an opportunity to speak into people's lives, like from that experience that I'm trying to hide.
Yeah.
And so God just started showing me like how he was going to use this whole thing and that I needed to give it to him because it was a secret, right? And so that secret in my hands, me holding on to it, was just a devil's play toy. He could use it to do whatever he wanted. He could use it to keep me scared. He could use it to keep me in the bed. But once I gave it to God, now he can do what he wants with it.
Yeah.
And that's when my life started really changing and I started walking in my true purpose. Now, I'm not saying that I don't still have dark days and I don't still have days where I can't get out of bed. That'd be, that's not being authentic. I still have days, multiple days that those thoughts and those emotions come. Yeah. But I now have a support system that it doesn't disable me for months. And it, it doesn't go to that place of suicidal thought, all of that. And it's not that it doesn't happen. I don't want to give anybody the impression that, like I figured it all out and now it doesn't happen. It still happens. I just have tools to deal with it.
Yeah. I said this to someone, it was about a month ago. And he was asking me about my perspective on finding purpose and living it out. And I said, I can only speak from my life because I got enough time behind me now. I can kind of put things together about how God has operated. And I said, for me, typically he's crippled me to align me. And if you think about crippling, it means you walk with a limp. It means you have, wait a minute, I need help to get up. It doesn't God doesn't cripple you and then fix you and then you go. Because what I'm finding out more and more, Alisia, and that's what's inspiring about your story, is that a woman who's watching this video cast could go, I bet she'll be straight with me. And that in a world of so many people who are performing, so many people who are trying to put on a different face and they have multiple versions of themselves, that's like water in a desert, I'd have to believe. Sort of as we're getting kind of close to the close here, I wanted to ask you about, from that, again, that perspective of someone out there who maybe says, okay, Alisia, yeah, you're right. I've kind of come to the place where I think I need to go see a counselor. Could you share maybe what was your process of determining who you were going to see? Did you ask for referrals? Did you just, go online? What was your process for kind of beginning that journey?
So originally I talked to my medical doctor first and kind of explained what was going on. I have some other conditions, like where I said, like medicines don't play well together. So I've got some other things going on that was affecting me as well. So I wanted to make sure that I was looking at that. So the first time I seen a counselor, I actually got a referral from my medical doctor.
Okay.
But just like I was saying about small groups, every fit is not a good fit.
Right.
And so once I got into the realm of counseling and started to really understand what I needed to get out of it, I started seeking referrals from people in my circle that had seen a counselor to see if, do you like your counselor? How, you know what I mean? And so I started talking to people and asking for referrals. And that's how I found the one that I just loved. She was a referral from a friend.
Okay.
Who neither of us knew we were in counseling.
Okay. Wow. So if I understand right, then the more you went in those steps on that journey, you're getting more informed, you're getting more laser focused about, okay, this is what I feel like I need. This is the type. Is that kind of what you're saying?
So, because when you first start counseling, you don't even know what counseling is, right? Like what happens in that room, right? When you sit on that couch, like what happens? So I didn't know like what their role was going to be. So I couldn't really specify like, oh, well, I need somebody that, can speak to. So for instance, do I want a man or a woman?
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Do I want a Christian counselor or a non-Christian counselor? Like there's a lot of variables to it.
Yeah.
And just like with any relationship, everybody's not gonna connect.
Yeah.
And so as you start walking down that path and getting clear on what's going, once we ruled out medical things, then, you know what I mean? So then you get clearer and clearer until you finally get to the counselor, the one, right?
Right. And you mentioned, I noticed that the counselor that you're with, you love. So they've obviously been able to help you a great deal. What difference has it made for you in that regard? And I won't ask you to necessarily go into detail as much as talk about what's better, what you like, because I want people to understand that there is a great benefit from this.
So I found a counselor. I found a Christian counselor. I found a woman. I found an African-American woman Christian counselor. And so she's just able to understand. I don't have to spend a lot of time explaining my experiences of being a Black female. Like she gets that. And then, when I talk about toxic Christianity, she gets it. She's like, yes, I've been in that environment. I understand what you're talking about. So we're able to just dive into the meat of things. And I don't have to spend a lot of time explaining why I'm where I'm at, or what I think got me to where I'm at. And then the other reason why I really, really liked her is because she speaks to not the broken woman sitting on her couch, but to the warrior I believe God called me to be.
Oh, yeah.
So while we deal with what's going on in the moment, but she speaks to that person that's struggling, trying to get out, which is so, for me, was really important at that time because I didn't believe that I was that person.
Yeah.
I knew I had some gifts. I knew I had some talents. I knew I had some things, but it was all jumbled up with, the depression and not feeling good enough and, all of that self-talk that was going on. And I needed somebody to come alongside and speak to that person that was trying to get out.
Wow.
And that's what she did. And that was the most valuable part of my sessions with her, is that she listened and she guided, and we went back and dug into some stuff, but she didn't let me stay there.
Wow. That's powerful. I know from my experience, and just to share, because I think it's kind of it's not the same thing, but it does speak to breakthrough. Because for me, Alisia, I was Superman. There wasn't a problem. There wasn't an issue that I could not fix. I could do it for my family. I do it for my friends. And, it was almost, in a way, it was like me saying, God, you sit down. I'll take this load, right? Okay. You recognize that, right? So every Superman or woman, I think, eventually needs to deal with kryptonite. And for those of you who are watching the video cast, I'm going to date myself, but we all know Superman, his one thing that renders him powerless is kryptonite. Well, I was in a situation where all of my great leaping over tall buildings and rescuing people from the fire failed me. I had no more energy, and I was emotionally drained because I had multiple things coming at me at the same time. And I'm in this therapy session. I can't remember how many I did with him, but we were going through things, and he asked me this question, Alisia. He said, "So why is it that you feel like?" And I interrupted him, and I said, "Because I have to." And he said, "Stop. Say that again." And I'm like, "I have to." Okay. What is it that you have to do? And Alisia, my great breakthrough was I thought I was responsible for 20 things. He made it very clear. God made it very clear through my counselor, maybe about 4. You got to cut 16 out. He's not called you to that. He's not giving you the responsibility for that. And it forever changed me. It was like, the light. I see it. That's it. And I don't want to overstate it. And certainly yours is inspiring. And I'm thinking, man, there's a woman out there who's thinking, man, yeah, you're going to speak to the person I could be. And that I just hope, Alisia, that even at a minimum, if somebody reaches out to you after this video cast and says, hey, is that really what happened? And that you can have that conversation. Absolutely it did. And let me tell you this, because I think there's so many people, and in the case where we're going, what we're talking about with women who are living in that isolation, who do believe that the voice in their head is the only voice there is, right? So last area, and it's going to go into that, back to the women's ministry thing. Mm-hmm. At least our part of the world, the pandemic is seemingly coming to, it appears to be an end, or at least where things are opening back up again. I guess that's what they say. So what's on the horizon for the women's ministry inside of Violet, now that there maybe are more things that can be done besides a Zoom call or something?
Right. So I'm Zoom fatigued. So like everybody else.
Right.
So we have some events coming up where you can connect, some reconnection events. I'm going to be announcing a summer book club where cool. We're going to read a different book each month. They are Christian fiction, so nothing heavy. We're going to read a book each month. And the cool thing about this book club is it's local authors. Wow. So there are 3 friends of mine that all live right here in Central Columbus that on the day that we discuss the book are going to join us. So how cool is it to read a book, have a discussion, and be able to ask the author, like, what were you thinking? And so brilliant. Knowing that they're friends of mine, you can best believe they're going to be real and authentic and transparent with us. And so I'm really, really excited about that. One of the other things we're going to kick off is Secret Sisters. Now, I understand this was something they did way back, but it hasn't been done in my tenure there. And so we're going to do a 6-month run of having Secret Sisters where you'll sign up for the program. And then all of the women that are signed up will be matched. You won't know who each other is till the end. Right. And we're just going to speak life and bless and pour into our sister over a 6-month period. And we'll end with a big celebration where you find out who she was. But you'll know that through those 6 months, at least one other sister is praying for you. Wow. And there's that connection again. And the matches are not going to be Alisia matches. They're going to be God matches. Like, we're just going to put all the envelopes, pray over them, let God do what he does. So that's coming up. And then we'll have a retreat in the fall where we're going to talk about prayer and how do we pray, and how do we use prayer to change our lives, and how do we use prayer to speak into other people's lives and speak over them. And so T.D. Jakes had a book that I read during the pandemic called When Women Pray, and the incredible things that happen when women pray. And we need to understand that our prayers have power. And in the spiritual realm, that is the energy, is our prayers. So we're going to talk about that. So there's quite a few things coming up. I'm excited.
That's great to hear, because, well, I mean, obviously, selfishly, I think we all are motivated to get on to whatever the next normal is going to be, and having things like this. So two things along that line, and then we'll wrap up. Obviously, inside of Violet, all of those things that you're talking about will be, quote, advertised or
Exactly. Yep.
that kind of thing. And then, Alisia, if somebody wants to contact you directly because of something that they heard on today's video cast, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
So there's a couple ways. You can go on the website and go to ministries and go to women's ministry and hit contact us. That comes to me.
Okay, great.
The other way is email me, msalisia, ALISIA @gmail.com.
Okay, great. Great.
Is a way you can connect with me, and then just grab me.
All right. Yeah.
If you see me, just grab me.
See you, grab you. So for the benefit of the audience, those that have tuned in today, let me kind of tell you what I think you heard. Two points that I think are really important. Not the entirety, but I think as we come to a close, stay away from isolation. That can be the thing that really can put you in a hole. Leverage relationships, grow relationships to help you and to have people coming alongside of you. Would that kind of encapsulate? Is there anything else you'd want someone else to know or to think about?
Get help. It's okay to get help.
Yeah.
So get the help you need. That's important. And then just resource yourself. Like I've taken, and actually this is a good thing. I've taken a class called Mental Health First Aid.
Yes.
And so I am considered a first responder in the first aid realm. And it doesn't mean I'm not I didn't go to medical school or anything like that, but I just know the questions to ask and what to look for to help triage a situation. And that class is open to anybody. And right now, Ohio has a grant to offer that class for free. So you don't even have to pay for it. And it's a day of your time, day of your life that you can now be equipped to give back to other people. And you don't have to have had a bout of depression or anything else to qualify. Just be someone that cares. So wow, that is a critical thing. And so I don't have the link in my head, but I will send it, and I'm sure Eric will post it in the description so that if that's something you're interested in. Yeah, definitely. We'll put that in. We'll call those show notes and we'll have a link to that as well. That's great, Alisia. I can't thank you enough for taking out the time to be with us today. And I look forward to the next conversation because there's other things. There's so much more we could dig into. Because I do believe, this is gonna, okay, so nobody send me any emails because it sounds like I'm being a man basher, because I'm not, because hey, I'm a man. However, my experience is that women kind of are like the glue. And I'm saying this with all I'm probably not using the right words, but glue in the sense that their commitment, their willingness, their empathy, their desire to be real. I sometimes think, Alisia, we men are kind of in that we're least likely to go ahead and say, I need help. And I think the more women are that voice and the willingness to get up and talk and say it and be around others, maybe it inspires us men to be more that way. And I really believe that. So I appreciate you taking out the time. We thank everybody for tuning in. If you have questions for Alisia, she's given that information. We'll have more information in the show notes. And once again, we look forward to being with you the next time. Take care. Bye. Thanks, guys.
All right. And